This is a guide horse. Yes, a guide horse. And this is the favorite snack astronauts stash away before blasting off to space. From the professor who forgot where his class was because of Dungeons and Dragons to the FBI's Falafel Project, I'm Mike with List 25, and these are fascinating, today I learned, facts you'll want to slip into every conversation this week. Some jobs demand so much focus that even a tiny slip-up can turn into a disaster. So scientists at the University of Texas came up with a face tattoo to fix all that. Okay, I made it sound worse than it is. It's only a temporary E-tattoo, not permanent, and it shows up as a series of dark wavy lines across your forehead using graphite-based conductors to read signals from the brain and track your eye movements. If it spots mental fatigue, it can alert a phone app before you make a mistake. Researchers think it could be a lifesaver for pilots, doctors, or anyone working high-stress shifts. It might even work with AI helpers a bit further down the road. Chainsaw safety manuals around the world actually remind users not to hold the wrong end of the saw, because enough people have done exactly that. In the 80s, Sweden recorded a spike in injuries among casual operators who tried to restart a jammed saw or clear brush and ended up grabbing the running chain. Some even braced the saw on their own legs to pull start it, with the expected gruesome results. One poor guy needed dozens of stitches after grabbing the bar, thinking that the chain had stopped. The injuries became so common all around the world that the warning became a standard label worldwide. So yes, there really is a reason for everything, including warnings you and I might find silly. Nirvana once performed under the name Fecal Matter. Yep. Before they settled on their iconic name, Kurt Cobain and his bandmates cycled through a whole bunch of cringeworthy titles, like Brown Towel, Skid Row, Ted Ed Fred, and even Pen Cap Chew. The first confirmed time they called themselves Nirvana was in 1988 when they played the Community World Theater in Tacoma, Washington. Kurt even listed their past names on the show flyer so people wouldn't get confused. He wanted something beautiful instead of gritty and punk, and, well, that's how Nirvana stuck. Still, one of their old names did live on in their music. Pen Cap Chew eventually made it onto a 2004 album release. Mongolians believe you should see a witch doctor before getting a haircut. Now, you and I might find that a bit extreme, but according to one Mongolian legend, wandering spirits without a home can sometimes settle in our hair, clinging to the living for a place to rest. If you cut your hair while one of these souls is attached to you, you will end up killing both the spirit and yourself. So, before picking up the scissors, many Mongolians still consult a witch doctor or shaman who checks for any hidden spirits and gives the all clear. The 2013 film Gravity, starring Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, is one of the most realistic space movies ever made. And before you say something nasty in the comments below, that's not just my opinion. It comes straight from former NASA astronaut Garrett Reisman. After the movie's release, Reisman was asked how close it came to the truth. He admitted that the laws of physics got twisted for dramatic effect, but the film still captured the look and feel of a real spacewalk, better than any other sci-fi blockbuster he'd ever seen before. From the gentle drifting through zero gravity to the way Bullock worked through emergency shutdowns, the film's small details had Reisman genuinely impressed. He pointed out that she even reached for the right valves to cut off oxygen and pressed the correct buttons to navigate the Soyuz. Moves you would only know if you had trained for years as an astronaut. Most of us think of a Labrador Retriever when we picture a guide animal, but a miniature horse can fill that role just as well. Panda, the miniature horse, has been helping her owner, Ann Eddie, for years. Ann, who's been blind since birth, worked as a special education teacher and lived a full life with the help of her previous guide dog, Bailey, for 10 years. When Bailey died, Ann struggled to find a replacement, trying and failing with 2 new dogs. That's when she discovered Panda. Although a miniature horse might not be practical for everyone, they can live up to 30 years, which makes them a great option for people who want to avoid the stresses of replacing a guide animal again and again. Somewhere out there, someone watching this list has either seen or personally known a person born with extra fingers or toes. The medical term for this is polydactyly, and it's far more common than you might think. So, what are the odds of having it? Around 1 in every 500 babies is born with an additional digit, which works out to roughly a 0.2% chance for each birth. Most babies born with polydactyly are completely healthy. Sometimes the extra finger or toe is just a small growth, and other times it's fully formed and moves like any other. In either case, it doesn't affect overall health, and doctors usually remove it before a child turns 2. The condition shows up equally in boys and girls, but varies by race. Black infants are more likely to have an extra finger near the pinky, while white infants more often have one near the thumb. Before it became a number we count on food labels, the calorie actually started as a physics term. Back in the early 1800s, a French scientist named Nicolas Clément used it to measure heat energy. Basically, how much heat it takes to warm water. Later, nutritionists borrowed the idea to figure out how much energy our bodies release when breaking down food. So when your snack says 300 calories, it's really saying your body could, in theory, generate enough heat to warm 300 kilograms of water by 1 degree Celsius. And that calorie on your packaging isn't a single calorie at all. It's technically a kilocalorie, or 1,000 little ones, just written with a capital C to make it look friendlier. People have been seeing strange flashes on the moon for hundreds of years. One of the first recorded cases goes back to 1178, when a monk named Gervase of Canterbury swore he saw the moon suddenly split in two, followed by bursts of fire and sparks. Today, astronomers refer to these sightings as transient lunar phenomena, or TLP, and scientists have confirmed that they're caused by meteoroids hitting the moon's surface. The event Gervase described was long linked to the Giordano Bruno crater, but it's now believed to have been a meteor breaking apart in Earth's own atmosphere. So that one probably didn't even hit the moon. On November 30th, 1954, Ann Hodges of Alabama had the most unusual nap in recorded history. The 34-year-old was resting on her living room sofa when an 8.5-pound meteorite tore through the roof, smashed into her wooden radio console, and bounced onto her side. The space rock, later identified as a 4.5 billion-year-old chondrite, split in two as it entered the atmosphere. One piece hit Hodges' home, and another was discovered a few miles away by a local farmer, Julius McKinney. Now, unfortunately, the actual ownership of the rock led to a brief legal dispute between the Hodges family and their landlord, Bertie Guy. But she eventually accepted a $500 settlement so Ann could keep it. The second fragment, the one found by McKinney, was later sold and eventually ended up at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History, where you can still see it to this day. Dr. Robert Liston was a man on a mission. Born in 1794, he became known as the fastest surgeon in Britain. Not a small feat at all. You see, before anesthesia, speed meant survival. Every extra second on the table meant more pain, more blood loss, and a greater chance the patient wouldn't make it. Liston could take off a leg in under 2.5 minutes, which, when I say it like that, sounds incredibly impressive, but one operation made history for all the wrong reasons. During an amputation, he moved so fast that he accidentally sliced off his assistant's fingers and almost took out a bystander. The patient later died of infection, the assistant too, and the poor spectator supposedly dropped dead from shock. 3 deaths, 1 surgery. Still, Liston wasn't just about speed. He performed Europe's first public surgery using ether in 1846 and designed several of the surgical tools we still use today. There are a few Guinness World Records people rarely talk about. One of those is the one held by a Bengal tigress named the Champawat tiger, who turned the Nepal-India border into her hunting ground. She killed over 400 people, the highest human death toll ever recorded for a single tiger. She started targeting villages in Nepal in the late 1890s and would drag people from their fields and even their homes, forcing whole communities to flee. When hunters finally pushed her out, she simply crossed over into India's Champawat district and kept going. She kept it up for almost 20 years, until a hunter by the name of Jim Corbett tracked her down in 1907 and ended the killing spree. There's been an upgrade to sunscreen, but sadly, we can't buy it yet. The prototype actually cools you while protecting you from sunburn. I kid you not. Standard sunscreen blocks ultraviolet rays to help prevent skin cancer, but it doesn't do much about the sun's heat, which hits you as infrared radiation. The new formula uses a nano-sized titanium dioxide reflecting both UV and infrared rays. Tests in the lab showed it could provide an SPF of about 50, hold up in water, and last about 12 hours under intense conditions. But real-world trials were even more impressive. People testing it in hot, humid places saw their skin temperature drop by as much as 11 degrees compared to the usual sunscreens, which is huge if you're working or playing outside all day. Can't wait to use that to go to Disney. Firearms are a lot older than most people think. One of the oldest surviving examples is the Heilongjiang hand cannon from China, which dates back to the late 1200s. It doesn't really look like a modern gun, but it used the same basic idea. Pack in gunpowder, light a fuse, and launch a deadly projectile. This cannon had a bulb-shaped chamber for powder, a small ignition hole, and a space for a wooden handle. It weighed nearly 8 pounds and was about 13 inches long, so it was hefty, but still manageable. Still, it helped to kickstart the evolution of firearms, so, we'll give it respect where it's due. A landlord once got a bunch of rowdy college athletes under control by calling their coach. The tenants, a group of football and golf players, were throwing crazy parties, trashing the place, and letting guests relieve themselves in neighbors' yards. I'm not even going to talk about the parking. The landlord tried the usual things to get them under control, going to their parents and even the police, but nothing worked. Finally, he decided to get in touch with their coach, hoping that he might scare them straight. And he absolutely did. The coach made the players run extra laps at practice over and over until the message sank in. After that, the parties calmed down, the neighbors stopped complaining, and the landlord could breathe again. Dutch judges aren't allowed to toss out unconstitutional laws. In the Netherlands, even if Parliament passes something that goes completely against the Constitution, the courts have to let it stand. Article 120 of their Constitution makes it crystal clear: no judicial review of laws on constitutional grounds. For anyone used to judges striking down bad legislation, this sounds unorthodox, to say the least. But Dutch lawmakers believe democracy should rest with the people's elected representatives, not unelected judges. Defenders say it keeps power in Parliament, where voters can hold politicians accountable, while critics argue it puts minorities at risk with no backup plan if lawmakers go too far. No matter how you see it, in the Netherlands, judges apply the law exactly as written without stepping in to question whether Parliament went over the constitutional line. 2 ordinary guys from Boston went to a deadly glacier where search teams wouldn't, and recovered pieces of a plane wreck left there for decades. Eastern Airlines Flight 980 crashed in a mountain in Illimani near La Paz, Bolivia in 1985, killing all 29 on board. The Bolivian Air Force located the wreck the very next day, but declared the site too dangerous for a proper recovery. So for 30 years, the wreck stayed untouched. Dan Futrell and Isaac Stoner decided to change that. With no mountaineering experience, they trained, geared up, and climbed the mountain in 2016, finding scattered debris, clothing, and even human remains still frozen in the ice, which they marked for later recovery. They managed to bring back metal parts and a spool of tape they hoped were from the black boxes, but tests revealed it was just a Spanish TV show. The real recorders are still there. Just when you think technology has gone as far as it can, China finds a new way to surprise everyone. In September 2025, a viral video showed a public restroom that only gives out toilet paper after you scan a QR code and watch an ad. The idea was to cut down on toilet paper waste, but it raised some obvious questions. What if your phone's dead? What if there is no internet? Worst of all, what if the system glitches after you've already done your business? The concept might look efficient on paper, pun very much intended, but it's one of those ideas that probably shouldn't leave the testing phase. We can only hope this one gets flushed out of existence sooner rather than later. In 2020, Austria decided everyone's favorite paper deserved more than just a spot in the bathroom and gave it its own postage stamp. Now, commemorative stamps aren't unusual. The US has honored everyone from Christopher Columbus to Betty White. But Austria took it a little further. In October of that year, they released more than 250,000 souvenir stamps designed to look and feel like a sheet of toilet paper. Each one was 10 centimeters long, tore off just like the real thing, and even featured little animal cartoons reminding people to keep their distance during the pandemic. The stamp cost 2.75 euros, and the proceeds went to charities helping those affected by COVID-19. So yes, in the middle of global chaos, Austria somehow made toilet paper collectible, and they managed to do it for a good cause. In July 2015, police in St. Petersburg, Russia arrested 68-year-old Tamara Samsonova, now known as the Granny Ripper. She was linked to several disappearances going back decades, and honestly, I can't believe she hasn't started her own horror movie yet. Security footage from her building showed her calmly dragging plastic bags down the hall in the middle of the night. Inside one, police found the remains of 79-year-old Valentina Ulanova, her former employer and housemate. When they searched her apartment, they found a bloody hacksaw, books on dark rituals, and a diary written in 3 languages. It described what she did to her victims after giving them sleeping pills. And the rest I can't even say, because this is still, a family channel. Just think Dahmer, but with a Russian accent. When she went to court, she smiled, blew kisses to reporters, and claimed a maniac upstairs made her do it. She was eventually sent to psychiatric treatment in 2017. Some of you might know this already, but you're not allowed to remove any of the stones lying around Stonehenge. A few times in the past, though, restoration work did take place, and it just so happens that in 1958, a crew drilled into one of the massive pillars and took a few core samples. One disappeared and stayed lost for 60 years until someone finally returned it. So when scientists got their hands on that missing piece in 2018, they were pretty excited. I mean, for these guys, it was better than finding a hoard of lost Roman coins. The surprise came when they examined the piece under a microscope and discovered it was 99.7% quartz, with tightly interlocked crystals that made it unbelievably strong. That might be exactly why the original builders chose it. With 52 of these sarsen stones still standing, Stonehenge might actually be more crystal than stone. Traditional glues usually give up the moment they hit moisture, but mussels have been pulling it off for millions of years. These little shellfish can latch on to just about anything, from rocks to metal to plastic. Their secret is a structure called the byssus, a bundle of tough, stretchy threads tipped with sticky plaques. Inside those plaques are special proteins packed with an amino acid called DOPA, which lets them bond tightly even when it's completely wet. Scientists have been studying their peculiar brand of magic for years, and they've recently said they're getting close to copying it. This stuff could change everything, from ship repairs to surgery. In fact, it could lead to medical glues that work inside the body, helping seal tissue or keep bones in place, all without losing their grip. Perfume isn't usually something we think of as brain food. It's just there to make us smell nice, right? Well, not quite. A group of researchers in Japan did a study and had one group of women wear rose-scented oil on their clothes every day for a month, while another group used plain water. When the month was up, the MRI scan showed something quite unexpected. The rose oil group had more gray matter in parts of the brain linked to memory and thinking, especially in an area called the posterior cingulate cortex. The water group? No change at all. That same region tends to shrink in people with Alzheimer's, which has scientists wondering if something as simple as a scent could help slow mental decline. There's a shipping container sitting on the ocean floor in California that turned into a weird accidental experiment for scientists all around the world. Lost off Monterey Bay in 2004, this upside-down 40-foot steel box turned into a deep-sea apartment complex for snails, crabs, tube worms, and fish, with its influence spreading nearly 30 feet in every direction. Researchers from MBARI and NOAA have checked in on it multiple times over the years, most recently in 2021, and found that the metal barely corroded while colonies of tunicates, tube worms, and other creatures grew and shifted around it. The big question is how these marine time capsules might affect invasive species, pollution, or delicate ecosystems, especially since new IMO rules in 2026 will improve tracking, but still won't prevent containers from sinking in the first place. There's nothing an innovative student won't do, including turning an old bakery into the launch point for one of the biggest tunnel escapes of the Berlin Wall. In 1965, Joachim Neumann, who had already fled East Germany with a forged Swiss passport, was desperate to reunite with his girlfriend, Christa Greuer, still stuck on the other side. With a dozen helpers, he started digging from that abandoned bakery using nothing but buckets and shovels. They worked in secret for 5 months, tunneling nearly the length of a football field and crashing at the bakery between exhausting shifts. When the border guards finally caught on, chaos broke out at the checkpoint, with one guard accidentally shooting and killing another. The tunnel didn't last long after that. Authorities sealed it off, but it had already done the job, helping 57 people reach the west. Tourists are destroying one of Northern Ireland's most famous natural landmarks with pocket change. The Giant's Causeway, with its thousands of interlocking basalt columns, has stood strong for nearly 60 million years. But lately, visitors have taken to jamming coins into the narrow cracks between the rocks, thinking it's a harmless wish or a souvenir trick. It's not. As those coins rust, they expand up to 3 times their original size, forcing the columns apart and weakening the entire formation. The accompanying corrosion also leaves behind ugly orange streaks, and chipping at the gaps to wedge in coins causes even more damage. Park staff says there are so many coins now that removing them could cost upwards of $40,000, and that if people keep it up, the iconic site might not survive the next few generations. An entire island off the coast of Japan has disappeared. Esambe Hanakita Kojima, a tiny uninhabited island near Hokkaido, was first documented in a 1987 maritime survey and counted as a part of Japan's exclusive economic zone. It had been ignored for decades because of its remote location and small size. But when locals tried to locate it years later, the island had quite literally eroded into nothing. Experts say rising seas, coastal erosion, and drifting ice flows probably wore away its sediment base bit by bit until it was gone. The disappearance has sparked concern in Japan's maritime circles, since losing islands can shift international boundaries tied to fishing rights, resources, and shipping lanes. And it's not just Japan. Other small Pacific islands have vanished the same way, with more under threat if seas keep creeping higher and storms keep battering the coasts. Taxpayers in the Czech Republic just saved about $1.2 million, all thanks to a group of beavers' unique dam building skills. Officials have been trying since 2018 to build a dam along the Klobava River to protect its ecosystem, especially the critically endangered crayfish, from floods carrying acidic sediment-heavy water. But years of delays and red tape slowed construction plans. Luckily, while the permit process dragged on, the beavers got to work on their own. They built at least 4 dams across the area, doing exactly what engineers had planned, only faster and for free. Their hard work will help reduce flooding damage and protect river species without the government spending a cent on a new dam. Damn. If you have no idea what I just said, trust me, you've already seen some of them, and probably loved it. ASMR stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. But really, it's just those oddly satisfying videos that keep popping up in your feed. Some will show people cleaning carpets or cutting soap or squishing slime. They can be different in every possible way, but they all come out with just the right amount of rhythm and precision, like the way soap slices evenly or muddy carpet fibers come back spotless one sweep at a time. For many viewers, these videos actually help them calm down, lower stress, and even fall asleep faster. And science has gotten behind it too. Researchers say they can trigger that deep sense of comfort people usually get from meditation. The creators behind it have, without even realizing it, built one of the simplest forms of relaxation therapy out there. Sorry. Okay, back to normal. In 2015, a group of archaeologists set up a short-term camp near Centrum Lake in northeast Greenland. They'd been exploring nearby caves, and after days of freezing temperatures and bland rations like porridge and powdered milk, they were ready for something decent. What they got was a dinner straight out of the 50s. While hiking through the icy landscape, the team stumbled across a pile of old metal tins marked Combat Ration Individual. Some dated 1955 and 1960. They, in all likelihood, belonged to a U.S. Army expedition that had passed through the same region decades earlier. The soldiers had hidden a stash of food for their return trip, but never came back for it. When the archaeologists opened the tins, they found surprisingly well-preserved meals. Beans, crackers, jam, cocoa powder, and even meatballs. Thanks to Greenland's extreme cold and dry air, everything inside was still intact. So after 60 years on ice, the team cooked it up and dug in, apparently unfazed that their dinner was older than any of them. When European ships first landed in Australia in 1788, they brought more than just people. A few cats snuck off too. And that's where everything started going downhill. With no predators to keep them in check, they spread across the country and turned into tiny fluffy killing machines. Since then, they've helped wipe out more than a dozen native species and still kill about 1.4 billion animals every single year. Even pet cats are a part of the problem, adding another 390 million kills to that total. So Australia decided to fight back in the most practical way possible, with fences. Massive, high-security fences. The idea, called Project Noah, is to block off huge pieces of land, kick out the cats, and give native animals a safe place to bounce back. One of the first test sites, New Haven Wildlife Sanctuary, has already proved the fences work. Inside its 36 square mile enclosure, endangered species are thriving again, and the next step is to roll out more protected zones across the country. Most plants have harmless ways to spread seeds. They'll hitch a ride on the wind, float down a river, or cling to an animal's fur and catch a lift somewhere new. But there's one tree that takes that idea way too far. It's called the Pisonia tree, and it grows on tropical islands across the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Instead of light, fluffy seeds, it makes long, sticky pods coated in natural glue and tiny hooks. When birds land on a branch, the seeds latch onto their feathers, and they don't hold back. Within minutes, a small bird can be so weighed down it can't even fly. Some collapse under the trees, others get picked off by predators, and for some reason the tree doesn't seem to gain anything from it, which makes it hard to tell whether it's an evolutionary glitch or a design that works a little too well. This 620-foot skyscraper was hidden in plain sight for 28 years, right in the heart of London. Could people see it? Yes. Could they enter it? Also yes. But was it on a map? No, absolutely not. This mammoth of a building was classified as a state secret from 1965 to 1993. Worst kept secret in history. Despite being obscenely visible from all over London, and even operating as a public observation gallery that anyone, including tourists, could visit, the British government refused to acknowledge its existence. The tower had no recognized address and was treated by the government as if it weren't even there. The charade ended on February 19, 1993, when Labour MP Kate Hoey used her parliamentary privilege to confirm it was real. As if no one knew. As if every single person living in London didn't see it on a daily basis. So yes, the British government kept a 620-foot tower a secret by refusing to talk about it. Peak British bureaucracy. Joe Hill is a successful horror and fantasy author who was born with a whole lot of talent. Talent that he got from his father. For the first decade of his career, he kept his parentage a secret and chose a pen name so people wouldn't compare his work to his ultra-famous father's. Born Joseph Hillstrom King, he was the second child of the king of horror himself, Stephen King. His secret was so well kept that even his literary agent had no idea about his true identity. He was determined to be judged solely on his own merit and not his last name. The strategy worked, and he achieved massive success with his novels and short stories. He earned recognition and awards before finally telling everyone that he was the son of a living legend. By the time people found out he was a Nepo baby, no one cared. He'd already proven himself, and for some, they like him more than his dad. Now that's quite an accomplishment. Some secrets come back to bite you, which is the case for Denise Rossi. In 1996, she won $1.3 million in the California lottery. Not one to share, she decided to divorce her husband, Tom, 11 days later without telling him about her windfall. Not at all. She kept that money hush-hush all the way through the divorce proceedings. Tom had no idea until 2 years after the divorce was finalized, and that's when things took a turn. Tom wasn't about to sit back and let his rich ex stay rich. He hauled her into court and sued her for fraud. In 1999, a California judge sided with the scorned ex and awarded Thomas the entire $1.3 million as a penalty for Denise's deliberate concealment of community property. Denise went from living the high life to being broke, all because she lied. Her ex-husband walked away with every single penny, the judge read her the riot act, and Denise was left with nothing but egg on her face. Moral of the story? If you win the lottery, don't divorce your partner unless you're ready to split it. Community property laws will catch up to you. In 2004, a man named Marvin Heemeyer shocked the small town of Granby, Colorado with a secret project years in the making, a killdozer. And what exactly is a killdozer? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's an armored bulldozer that Heemeyer created after feuding with local officials over zoning disputes. He spent months modifying the bulldozer to encase it in layers of steel and concrete. On June 4, 2004, he went on a 2-hour rampage through Granby, systematically destroying businesses and buildings connected to anyone he was feuding with. The rampage only ended when the killdozer became stuck in a building's basement. And tragically, that's where Heemeyer took his own life. He kept that bulldozer a secret until he was ready to unleash it onto the town. During his 2-hour rampage, he caused upwards of $7 million in damages, and it remains one of the most destructive acts of revenge in American history. In September 2004, the Paris police made a shocking discovery in an uncharted section of the city's famous catacombs. There was a fully functional underground cinema, complete with a stocked bar, a restaurant, and even a professional electricity setup. It was a wild find, and they headed back to the station to sort out what to do about it. Well, they took too long talking and not jumping into action, because when they returned a few days later to investigate and trace the power lines, everything was gone. The electricity had been cut, and whoever built the space took the entire setup with them, leaving only a note that said, "Do not try to find us." The cinema is thought to be created by a secret group of urban explorers and artists called Les Mexicains de Perforation, also known as Les UX. However, this was not proven, and no one ever took credit for the underground hotspot. Escaped prison inmate Jeffrey Allen Manchester, aka Roofman, went on the lam in 2004 and pulled off one of the strangest fugitive stories ever. This man broke into a Toys R Us in Charlotte, North Carolina, through the roof. He then built himself a secret hideout in the store and lived there for months completely undetected. This man was living the high life on the down low. He created a small concealed space where he slept, watched DVDs, and even played with toys he took right off the shelves. He avoided detection by eating baby food and using a baby monitor to keep tabs on customers and employees. He'd sneak out at night to shower and exercise at a nearby fitness center before returning to his toy store home. His setup was eventually discovered, as you would expect. And yes, it did lead to his capture. And it also led to this becoming one of the top news stories all across the nation. That's right, not China or Thailand or any other place where rice comes from. When you eat a bowl of rice in America, there's a high probability the grains got there via Arkansas, California, Texas, and various locations inside the US. American rice production started in South Carolina in the late 17th century thanks to the efforts of a colonist named Dr. Henry Woodward. Over 300 years later, the US sells a whole bunch of rice. And guess what? Only some of it is for eating. It can also be used for brewing beer, like Budweiser, which is brewed with white rice. Just 20% of America's rice is imported, leaving the rest to be grown domestically. What's the connection between the Internal Revenue Service and kidnapping? No, they don't kidnap you if you don't pay your taxes. I'm talking about the rules the IRS follows if a child gets kidnapped. It's a shocking thing. So personal finances are probably the last thing on your mind. But the hard truth is, you still need to think of tax breaks, even in a high-stress situation. For low-income families, these are very important. They need child tax credits and similar help during their terrible ordeal. This is because of the many musical duties expected of soldiers. Musical duties? Like what? You ever heard of military bands? Playing instruments is a big part of Army tradition, whether accompanying a march or performing their own hip-hop, which is a thing that actually happens. In fact, the US Army has specially employed hip-hop performers as well as trumpet players and other orchestra members. The scale of their work means the Army is the largest hirer of musicians in the country. Incredible as it seems, there are a greater number of ethnic Norwegians in the States than in Norway. How come? Like many countries, Norway saw the US as a land of opportunity, meaning they moved to America in large numbers between 1830 and 1920. There had been Norwegians emigrating there before, but a lot came over during this particular time, with 800,000 making the trip for a better life. Steamships boosted immigration, because you could get to far-off places faster and more safely than on a sailing boat. Access to farmland was a big reason behind Norwegians relocating, though in a small number of cases they were escaping religious persecution. There are around 4.5 million people of Norwegian descent in the US compared to approximately 5.5 million who make up the entire population of Norway. States with a high percentage of Norwegians include North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Microsoft Excel is only good for stats and spreadsheets, right? Well, someone who disagrees with that analysis is Tatsuo Horiuchi. Why? Because he's an Excel artist. Horiuchi shows a whole new side to the popular Office program, using its color functions to create beautiful scenes of mountains, trees, and flowers. Starting in 2006 as a retiree, he started grabbing attention with his unique form of art. How did he get the idea to use Excel in this way? Horiuchi thought the cost of art software packages were too expensive, so he decided to work with what he had instead of splashing out. She was famous for being the lady with the lamp, but Nurse Florence Nightingale was also known as the lady with the hammer. The hammer wasn't being used on patients, by the way. She used it to smash the locks on medicine cabinets. You may think of Florence Nightingale being a caring and gentle person, and in many ways, I'm sure she was. However, she didn't wait around when it came to getting her hands on essential supplies on the battlefield. The Crimean War of the mid-19th century was maiming soldiers and claiming lives, and she wanted to take urgent action. She was a more proactive figure than you might think, standing up for women's rights and their role in society. Plus, Nightingale was also active on the political front, holding some unsavory views about British colonialism, as many sadly did at this time. The year was 1997, and Jeff Goldblum pulled off one of the greatest rickrolls of the century using the video game The Lost World: Jurassic Park. The game had a secret ending that, if players managed to unlock, they got a live-action clip of Goldblum as Dr. Ian Malcolm. What made this even more unhinged was the message. Was he there to congratulate the players? Nope. He was there to roast them. Goldblum's cheeky video told them to put the game down, go outside and interact with real people, especially people of the opposite sex, and actually live. It was sarcastic, it was hilarious, and it was actually some pretty good life advice. This message became a legendary Easter egg among fans. They would spend hours beating the game over and over just to get to the video and relive the hilarious magic. It's one of video gaming's most memorable fourth wall breaks. Did you know that the United Kingdom has a secretive group of couriers called the Corps of King's Messengers? Well, let me tell you all about them. They hand-deliver all the classified documents to the British embassies and high commissions all over the world. These folks travel in plain clothes and blend in as ordinary passengers, but with a super big secret. They're carrying diplomatic packages that are protected under the Vienna Convention. Known as diplomatic bags, these satchels are exempt from airport security searches and x-rays due to diplomatic immunity. No one, and I mean no one, can legally open or inspect them. There is a catch though. While the bags themselves have diplomatic immunity, the messengers do not. They can be detained by foreign governments, have their personal belongings searched, and even face charges if they break the law. Imagine carrying one of the world's most classified bags and ending up in a holding cell because you did something wrong. Try explaining that to your boss. Want a way to stay out of the Los Angeles traffic? Grab yourself a good pair of walking shoes and go beneath the downtown core to the sprawling network of underground pedestrian tunnels. They were originally built in the early 1900s to connect government buildings and courthouses, and they spanned several city blocks. The tunnels were secretly used to transport mobsters, murderers, and even over $1 billion in cash between banks. They also served as a fallout shelter during the Cold War. In the later years, they secretly housed the homeless, who made the tunnels into makeshift shelters. And yes, in true LA fashion, movies have been shot there as well. The tunnels have witnessed a whole century of LA's hidden history. While most are closed to the public now, they've served as hiding places, hidden spaces, and hosted everything from perp walks to Hollywood films. Back in the late 40s, a Kodak camera company employee was developing film when something strange kept happening. The film was developing with an unusual fogging that couldn't be explained by the normal causes. He decided to investigate. And what he found was shocking. He traced the contamination to a radioactive fallout from the secret Trinity nuclear test that happened in New Mexico in 1945. It was the first atomic bomb detonation by the US government. Little did the government realize, or maybe they did but didn't care, that the bomb contained enough radioactive material that it spread from New Mexico to Kodak's film production center in Rochester, New York. The employee chose to keep it a secret though. He didn't want the government backlash nor public panic. He only revealed his findings a few years later in 1949 after the secret test became known to the general public. Imagine finding out a huge government secret while you're just toiling away at your normal day job. Wild. Another doozy discovered on the job came in 1978, when an architecture student studying the Citicorp Center in New York City made the horrific finding that the skyscraper had a structural flaw that could cause it to collapse during strong winds. This became even more alarming with Hurricane Ella heading straight for the city. The student alerted the building's engineers, and they confirmed his fears. The bolted joints would not stand up against the incoming weather. City officials decided to keep the danger secret while the engineers worked quickly to solve the problem. They spent nights welding and reinforcing the structure while police quietly prepared a 10-block evacuation plan, including the thousands of people who occupied the building itself. As luck would have it, the repairs were made just in time for the hurricane to change course. The public didn't learn anything about this near-deadly situation until years later. Toyota is one of the world's most successful brands. In fact, it's so influential, they named a Japanese city after it. Up until 1959, the city was called Koromo. Then they rebranded it as Toyota. This was done because Toyota had a lot of manufacturing plants in Koromo, bringing prosperity and putting it on the map. The place is strongly tied to the company, just as somewhere like Detroit is nicknamed Motor City due to it being a home of American car making. Bonus fact, did you know Toyota started off as a weaving corporation in 1918? Before pistons and spark plugs, they dealt in looms and textiles. What's a Butzi Porsche? That's actually more of a question of who. Butzi Porsche was the man behind iconic sports car, the Porsche 911, though his career hit a speed bump at an early stage. He didn't even last a year at the Ulm School of Design in Germany, with tutors not rating him as a creative force. Luckily for Butzi, real named Ferdinand Alexander Porsche, he had options to fall back on, namely a family who'd become legendary in the field of automobile design and production. Butzi came up with the concept for the Porsche 911 in 1959, following that with the Porsche 904 a few years later. He passed away in 2012, having made his mark on the business. Do horses get spooked by birds? Well, certainly not this one. According to certain sources, Obelisk was a member of the British Queen's Guard, and his tendency to play with pigeons got him some attention. Now, when I say play with pigeons, I'm not being strictly accurate. This was more like pest control. You see, Obelisk pretended to be nice, picking up tasty oats in his mouth and spitting them out close by so the pigeons would swoop in, but then things turned nasty. Obelisk stamped on any unsuspecting birds who made the mistake of thinking a horse with big hooves was doing them a solid. This animal had a dark side, and it said he needed psychiatric help for his pigeon-pounding fixation. If you ask a NASA technician what they do, and they reply, "I'm a toilet sniffer," do not call the cops, and take them seriously. This is highly qualified work which focuses on astronaut safety. You could compare it to sniffing out any other kind of gas leak, it's just this job is all about waste management in space. Bad smells mean bad health and safety, making the NASA toilet sniffer an essential member of the team. Yes, there is a team, and it is headed by the chief sniffer. They pick up on any weaknesses that could potentially affect a space mission. One small stool for man, one giant log for mankind. What would make a great replacement for beef, chicken, and pork? How about hippo meat? Those of you living here in the US might be enjoying hippo burgers and barbecued hippo right now if a crazy scheme proposed by Robert F. Broussard had played out. Broussard was a senator who saw the animals as a weird solution to meat shortages. There was also a little bit of a method to his madness. America in 1910 had a problem with water hyacinth, a delightful sounding plant that was causing environmental disaster. Imported from South America, it invaded and smothered bodies of water, leading to trouble for ecosystems in Broussard's home state of Louisiana. He figured breeding hippos in the Mississippi would provide a ready-made answer to the water hyacinth headache, as well as offering Americans a new source of food. He came up with a name for the new product, Lake Cow Bacon, which he hoped would make the idea more appetizing. Surprisingly, it never worked out. Are you aware that your printer is secretly spying on you every single time you use it? No? Huh. Well, you're about to learn something fun. When you print a color document, your printer is secretly marking it with nearly invisible yellow dots to track you. This hidden code, called printer steganography, is embedded on each page. The tiny dots contain your printer's serial number and the exact date and time the document was printed. You can't see these with the naked eye, but they are fully visible under blue lights and magnification. The system was developed as a security measure to help law enforcement and governments trace counterfeit documents and illegal materials right back to the owner of the printer. The feature has been used for years and years, with most people having no idea. So, the next time you want to print something anonymously, just know that you may not be anonymous at all. The year was 1955, and Christmas was coming up fast. Sears decided to do something a little extra special that year and set up a phone line for children to call Santa Claus. That sounds lovely, right? I mean, it was. Except, they printed the wrong number. The line children were actually calling connected them to the Continental Air Defense Command, the predecessor to NORAD. Whoops. The officers manning the line decided they weren't going to rain on the children's parade and jumped right in to join in the fun. They answered those calls and gave the children updates on Santa's location, tracking his journey around the world. And the tradition stuck. NORAD continues to track Santa every Christmas Eve to this day. What started as some holiday cheer and an accidental wrong number has turned into a decades-long tradition full of Santa fun. In 1973, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker from Pascagoula, Mississippi, walked into their local sheriff's office to tell an unbelievable story. They claimed to be victims of an abduction. But not just any old abduction. The men were adamant that they were taken and had escaped from the clutches of aliens with lobster-like claws. Obviously, deputies thought it was a hoax. They left the men alone in a room equipped with audio surveillance to listen in on what they would say by themselves. Instead of them trying to come up with a story for their lie, the secret tape captured the men very obviously terrified and speaking in shaky voices as they went over what happened during their abduction. It seemed the guys were well and truly traumatized. The recording has become one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that this may have actually happened, or that at least something happened with these men. Aliens with lobster claws? That sounds outlandish to everyone, except Hickson and Parker. The Pascagoula abduction remains one of the most famous cases in US history and hinges on that secret recording. What's the best way to test out a security system? Have your own people try to break it. That's exactly what the US Navy did in the 80s when it wanted to flush out any potential breaches. They formed a team of elite former Navy SEALs called Red Cell. Their job was to act like terrorists. Red Cell's track record quickly became alarming. They infiltrated secure military bases, planted fake bombs, stole classified documents, breached Air Force One, and even kidnapped high-ranking officials. Nothing was off limits, and nothing could stop them. As you can imagine, military leadership was furious and completely embarrassed. The team proved their point. Security wasn't as tight as everyone believed. This secret mission worked, though. It exposed vulnerabilities that led to massive improvements in defense protocol. Speaking of the government, did you know the White House has a full-time chief calligrapher whose entire job is to create stunning handwritten invitations, place cards, greetings, and official proclamations for state dinners and presidential events? This isn't just a ceremonial role either. It's a serious position for a very serious artist. Every single handwritten document that leaves the White House reflects the formality of the presidency, and the chief calligrapher ensures perfection for everything, from dinner invites to official handwritten documents. Why type them up when they can be beautifully handwritten? The salary for this position? As of 2020, the chief calligrapher made $109,200. While most of us struggle to sign our names legibly, there's a person sitting in the White House getting paid over six figures for having the most amazing penmanship in America. The tumbleweed has been around so long in America, you might think it's a native species, but no. This distinctive rolling plant, which breaks loose from its roots to travel across the dusty plains, originally came from Russia, Europe, and Central Asia. How did it wind up in the States? Well, we don't exactly know. However, there seem to have been cases where tumbleweed seeds got mixed up with Russian flaxseed imports. These were used in linseed oil production. The tainted batches led to what's described as a rapid invasion of the USA. Killer bees didn't just land on our shores. They were the result of a misguided experiment from the 50s. This B-movie style story saw Warwick E. Kerr, a Brazilian geneticist, working with regular bees from Europe and Africa. His intentions were good, as Kerr wanted to create a tropical bee which was stronger than the usual kind, an insect that could make a lot of honey in very warm environments. Unfortunately, the result of this was a dangerous strain called the Africanized honeybee, which combined its sweetness with a deadly sting. A large swarm of them is capable of killing someone in self-defense, so the name isn't a gag. When these bees escaped their laboratory conditions, they swarmed around the world. What started out as a practical solution became a global problem. Africanized bees also inspired The Swarm, a late 70s disaster movie starring Michael Caine that's regarded as one of the worst movies of all time. Marbled crayfish can clone themselves through a process called parthenogenesis. This is where reproduction happens without any fertilization. In other words, the crayfish are female and don't need any male contributions. Interestingly, this came from a mutation triggered by pet breeders rather than something that happened in the natural world, though parthenogenesis can also be a natural thing. The crayfish, named after its marbled appearance, was first spotted creating clones in the mid-90s. Because they don't rely on a partner for reproduction, marbled crayfish can become too dominant, spelling trouble for other fish of this kind. It's an impressive skill, but also a dangerous one. Coriander fans might want to look away now, as I'm going to be talking about a creepy crawly that smells like your favorite herb. The brown marmorated stink bug, marmorated meaning veiny or streaky, releases a coriander-like smell when defending itself. Why is that? The bug contains the organic compound group aldehydes, which are also present in coriander and fellow ingredient cilantro from the same plant. So if you smell coriander, chances are you've either bothered a brown marmorated stink bug, or you've trodden on one. Ever heard of the Edelweiss Pirates? Based in Germany, they opposed the tyranny of the Nazis from within. Coming from working class backgrounds, the so-called pirates helped people fleeing from the Nazis, as well as other activities you might associate with teenagers, like vandalizing property. Though they were painting anti-Nazi slogans, so we can forgive them for that. The Edelweiss Pirates also attacked prominent Nazis, risking their necks in support of a free Germany and facing death as a consequence. Some of those brave individuals were just 14 or even younger. Have you ever been in the hospital and heard the term code pink over the intercom? Did you know that's one of the most terrifying codes for a hospital to call? It means there's a missing infant, and it triggers a mass emergency response. When code pink is called, all available staff are to drop what they're doing and secure the exits, monitor the hallways, and help find the missing baby. The hospital goes into a serious lockdown, and every single hallway, room, and camera is carefully monitored for signs of the abducted child. Why use codes instead of letting the public know what's going on? The last thing a hospital wants to do is cause panic among patients and visitors. Most people won't know what the code is, which is the way the hospital wants to keep it. Situations like this are stressful enough. Imagine the chaos if every single person began to panic. So maybe we shouldn't have put this one. Sorry, hospitals. Christmas in London is a magical time. Decorations, celebrations, and holiday cheer are abundant in the city. But it hasn't always been that way. In 1644, during Oliver Cromwell's Puritan rule, Christmas was outright banned in England. And by banned, I mean banned. Cromwell's government decided to one-up the Grinch and deem Christmas too fun, too excessive, and way too pagan. Their solution? Ban it completely. And I don't just mean the government not celebrating. I mean the government sent troops into the streets to bah humbug everyone's holiday. They patrolled every street, every house, and every single person. They confiscated holiday meals, and anyone caught celebrating faced punishments. The Puritans genuinely believed they were protecting true Christianity by canceling the holiday. But this move was so wildly unpopular that it fueled massive resentments against the government and Cromwell himself. Nevertheless, Cromwell didn't back down. The ban stayed in place for over a decade until 1660, when King Charles II returned to power and revoked the anti-Christmas legislation. If you live in Boston, you may not know that on Boylston Street, there's a forgotten treasure beneath the piano store. Steinert Hall is a historic underground concert hall that was built by Morris Steinert. It features ornate architecture and was designed with excellent acoustics in mind. For decades, this hall hosted countless events and concerts. The stunning design and superior sound quality made it a popular place for music acts as well as music fans. Sadly though, over time it fell into disrepair and was eventually abandoned. The doors closed in 1942. Nowadays, it's used for nothing more than storage for piano parts from the shop above. Most Bostonians have no idea it even exists, or that once upon a time, Steinert Hall held performances of a lifetime that included famous musicians like Sergei Rachmaninoff, Josef Hoffman, and former Prime Minister of Poland, Ignacy Jan Paderewski. In the 90s, the hall was visited by Sir Elton John, who loved the apocalyptic atmosphere. The Catholic Church seems to have patron saint for everything, including television. And the wildest part is the woman who is named for the patron saint of television wasn't even alive when TVs were invented. Let's talk about Clare of Assisi, the nun who died in 1253, centuries before even electricity existed. As the story goes, Sister Clare was too poor to attend Mass one day, but God knew how devoted she was and decided to help her out by projecting the church service onto her bedroom wall. She got to watch the entire thing from her bed like some kind of divine streaming service. Amazing. Fast forward to 1958. Pope Pius XII looked into the story and decided Clare's miracle had to be recognized. And with TV being a household staple now, it was only fitting to make her the patron saint of television and telecommunications. So yeah, a 13th century nun is the spiritual protector of your Netflix binges. Okay, I need you to close your eyes and picture the North Pole. What do you see? Ice? Snow? Polar bears? Temperatures that'll freeze your face off? Yeah, same. But did you know that 55 million years ago, the Arctic was basically Florida? During the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, the North Pole's temperature was a warm 74 degrees Fahrenheit. There were swampy forests, palm trees, and even turtles and alligators living on the land. No ice in sight. How do we know this? Through fossils, of course. Scientists discovered remains of tropical creatures that lived their best lives once upon a time on what is now the most frozen tundra on Earth. I mean, isn't it wild how our planet holds so many secrets? A young person who's up to no good in Russia is called a gopnik. The word is more a description of their stance than what they look like. Gopniks are known for squatting in the street, which is seen by some as a bad thing. It's possible the squatting started because there wasn't a lot of public seating at the places they like to hang out. You also see gopniks in Belarus and Ukraine, and it has an old Soviet-era vibe that continues to this day. Young men are gopniks, while young women are branded as gopnistas. A gopnik is a stereotype in the 21st century, so negative attitudes towards squatting teens are probably unjustified. For a long time, the village of Shani Shingnapur relied on one person to protect them from crime. Although I say person, I actually mean the deity Shani, who represents justice and who is an embodiment of the planet Saturn. Anyway, with criminals being potentially punished by Shani, the villagers didn't see a need for any locks or doors in the locality. This is a nice idea in theory, however, it probably doesn't work so well in practice. Shani Shingnapur has installed more earthly forms of security in recent times, which is a shame, but a modern fact of life. You might say people in the West worship their own security god, paying out money each month for video doorbells and other expensive measures to keep our home safe. Did you know that most of the Viagra in the world comes from one place? Also, the location and size of this place will surprise you. Welcome to the village of Ringaskiddy in County Cork, southwest Ireland. Only around 600 people live in Ringaskiddy, which means Skiddy's Point, and a similar number of people work at the local Pfizer plant where Viagra is made. You could describe it as the village that Viagra built, and there's a local legend about fumes from the chemicals factory affecting the surrounding population. I should stress that this is a legend rather than a scientific fact. The epic Maxi trial in Palermo, Italy lasted 6 years, and was the biggest attempt to crack down on mafia activity by Sicilian authorities in history. This elaborate operation took place between 1986 and 1992, and a suitable venue had to be found for the prosecution. A regular courthouse wouldn't cut it for this high-stakes trial, so the government constructed a special building from reinforced concrete, which became known as the Bunker Courthouse. 338 members of organized crime were convicted during this period, against a backdrop of threats and violence. Ancient Egypt was a time of slaves and pharaohs, so it's interesting to learn it was also the location of the very first worker strike on record. Laborers working on the Deir al-Medina necropolis, or cemetery, put their tools down and refused to carve another tomb until they were treated better. Bearing in mind they were challenging the will of the great pharaoh Ramses III, this was a bold move. The workers felt they had no choice because they weren't receiving payments on time. By payments, I mean food. These busy people received grain instead of money, though it's worth noting grains were a form of currency in those days. The strikers definitely went against the grain, disobeying royal instructions. However, the authorities caved and they got their pay in the end. Have you ever heard of Corinthian leather? It sounds super fancy and luxurious, right? The kind of material that would scream wealth and sophistication? Well, I hate to break it to you, but it's actually completely made up. Chrysler coined the term Corinthian leather in 1974 to promote its special new interiors for the Chrysler Imperial LeBaron, and more famously, Cordoba in 1975. They wanted people to feel special when they sat down on those buttery seats and pay the hefty price tag. They even hired actor Ricardo Montalban to star in TV commercials to promote the new car with their fancy leather. They played it off as if this were high-end and exclusive. It was all a lie, though. The leather they used actually came from a regular supplier in New Jersey. There was nothing special or fancy about it. No exclusive tanning process, no ancient techniques, no rare livestock were used. Just normal, everyday leather with a fun new name. Did it work? Yup. Were people duped? You bet. This advertising con job had people hooked, and those cars sold like hotcakes. Did you know that the winter used to be so brutal that the River Thames used to actually freeze? And that it was so frozen you could walk on it? That's what happened from the 16th to 19th centuries. And what did Londoners do when the river was all ice? Throw massive parties. These celebrations were called frost fairs, and they were wild. Vendors would set up stalls right on the ice to sell drinks, food, and trinkets. There would be makeshift pubs, souvenirs, games, and performances. Some fairs even featured ice bowling and horse races. One year there were even elephants. Yes, elephants. These frost fairs kept London hopping during the frigid little ice age. Leave it to the people of England to turn a frozen river into an opportunity to have a little fun. Like they say, when life gives you ice, you bring the elephants. Have you ever heard of an atlat? I hadn't either until I dove headfirst into this rabbit hole. It's an ancient spear-throwing device that was used for thousands of years. It was a huge game changer for anyone trying to hunt or defend themselves. The atlat would act like an extension of your arm and give extra leverage to launch the dart. When I say launch, I mean launch. This device could send the dart flying at speeds of up to 100 miles an hour. That's faster than most people can throw a baseball. It stored and released energy through a flexible dart and gave the user infinitely more accuracy than using just their hands. Ancient people used this long before bows and arrows became the go-to for hunting. It was effective, it was easy to use, and it was deadly. So yeah, our ancestors were out here throwing darts at highway speeds. Mad respect. In 1933, some of the wealthiest businessmen in the country hatched a plan to overthrow President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Yes, really. Titans like J.P. Morgan Jr., Irene Dupont, and Robert Sterling Clark were furious about FDR's New Deal policies and decided they had to oust him. They wanted him replaced with a fascist military dictatorship. To do this, they approached one of the most decorated Marines in U.S. history, Major General Smedley Butler. They asked him to lead the coup with the promise of an army of 500,000 veterans and millions of dollars in funding. What they didn't expect was Butler's response. He had no interest in overthrowing the government. Instead, he played along long enough to gather the evidence and took it all to Congress in 1934. He exposed the entire plot under oath. After investigation by the Congressional Committee, it was proven that this threat was real. The punishment for trying to stage a government coup? Shockingly, nothing. Absolutely nothing. No one was prosecuted, everyone got to walk away, and this story was swept under the rug. If you've been watching our videos for a while, you'll be well aware that the Earth's magnetic field is weakening. Atlantic currents are declining, the poles are shifting, and there's even a new ocean forming. But scientists are also now realizing that our planet's energy balance is completely out of whack. According to recent NASA data, the Earth is trapping way more heat than it's releasing, and it's happening much faster than anyone expected. Over the last 2 decades, the planet's energy imbalance has more than doubled, reaching about 1.8 watts per square meter in 2023. That's roughly twice what scientists predicted, and no one's really sure why. To make matters worse, many of the satellites used to track these numbers are nearing the end of their lifespan, which means we might soon lose our best tools for keeping an eye on one of the biggest warning signs our planet's giving us. If you're from West Virginia, I want to know. Say something in the comments, because for a place with less than 2 million people, your state has somehow become a home to an entire collection of cryptids that sound like they escaped from a very confused zoo. You've got the Mothman, of course, Point Pleasant's winged celebrity. Then there's the Flatwoods Monster, the Sheep Squatch in Boone County, and the Headless Grafton Monster. It's even been reported that someone has seen a vegetable man covered in leaves. Ask anyone from West Virginia and they'll tell you it's the mountains. Personally, I think it's a lack of streetlights and an overactive imagination. Or maybe people should just stay out of the woods? Still, if a state fair handed out prizes for weird creatures, West Virginia, you would definitely need your own category. Here's a fun one from the University of Haifa. In 2014, researchers there wanted to see if the time of year you're born affects when you start crawling. And as it turns out, it just might. They followed 47 healthy babies, half born in the warmer months and half in the colder ones. They found that the winter babies started crawling around 30 weeks old, about 5 weeks earlier than the summer crew. That is a big jump in baby time. Similar studies in Japan and Colorado found the same thing, but one in Canada didn't. The theory is that in places like Israel, Japan, and Colorado, the seasons hit harder, and colder winters mean babies spend more time indoors on firm floors, getting stronger faster. In Canada, though, it's pretty much the same temperature inside all year round, so the difference disappears. It's no secret that cows are cute, but they're also walking methane factories. Between the burps, the farts, and the mountains of manure, they pump out a gas that's about 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide when it comes to trapping heat in the atmosphere. With billions of cows feeding billions of people, that's a lot of emissions. But in California, farmers have found a surprisingly useful fix. They're turning cow poop into truck fuel. Farms now use massive tarps called digesters to seal off their manure pits. Instead of letting all that methane escape into the air, the covers trap it. The gas is cleaned and converted into renewable fuel for long-haul trucks. There are already over 130 of these digesters running across California dairies, and they've managed to cut methane emissions by more than 80%. Highland cows are the cutest, they're so fluffy. If you have a Highland cow, come bring it over, I want to pet it. In 1925, tensions between Greece and Bulgaria were already running high. Both sides had spent years arguing over who controlled Macedonia, so it didn't take much to spark a fight. What no one expected was for it to start with a dog. The story goes that a Greek soldier stationed near the border chased his runaway dog across the line into Bulgarian territory. A guard on the other side saw the soldier coming and fired, killing him on the spot. That one gunshot set off chaos. Within days, Greek troops marched into the Bulgarian town of Petrik, and what started as a pet rescue turned into an actual border war. The fighting lasted about 2 weeks, left around 50 people dead, and ended only when the League of Nations stepped in. Greece had to pull out and pay compensation. All told, it was definitely one of history's shortest and strangest wars. Pizza is a centuries-old meal, meaning that pizza delivery happened way earlier than you think. While mainstream pizza places started out around the 40s, that hot, cheesy goodness was first delivered to the door in 1889. The Italian city of Naples received a royal visit from Queen Margherita of Savoy, which is in the French Alps. Her Majesty wanted some food, and so 3 pizzas were sent by Raffaele Esposito, a chef who is credited with inventing modern pizza as we know it today. He colored one pizza green with basil, white with mozzarella, and red with tomatoes, representing his national flag. By doing this, he invented the iconic Margherita pizza, named in honor of the visiting monarch. It's not unusual for the kings of history to be made saints by the church. However, only one French ruler has ever been given that honor, and that is Louis IX. Nearly a quarter of a century after his death from dysentery during the Eighth Crusade in 1270, Pope Boniface VIII of the Catholic Church canonized or declared Louis' sainthood. Why was he made a saint? Well, he was deeply religious, with a strong sense of social justice, which impressed the Pope. Having said that, it wasn't such a great reign if you were Jewish, as King Louis persecuted the population for not sharing his beliefs. Skyscrapers built to withstand earthquakes? Well, there's something you don't see every day. Or rather, you do if you're in Mexico City. The Torre Mayor structure stands 55 stories tall and is a beacon of hope in a shaky world. Quakes are a worryingly normal event here. For example, close to 200 people died in a 7.1 magnitude event in 2017. How would the Torre Mayor structure handle a major earthquake? It was built with 98 shock absorbers or dampers, taking the stress out of powerful tremors. Plus, the foundations are reportedly 60 meters deep, planting the skyscraper firmly in the bedrock. In these troubling times, it's good to know the military is using technology invented back in the 70s? Yeah, US Armed Forces were still working with their IBM Series 1 machines, together with 8-inch floppy disks, right up until 2019. What were they used for? Oh, only the nuclear missile launch control system. How much data can you fit on an 8-inch floppy anyhow? The answer is approximately 80 kilobytes, which is lower than some thumbnails. Now, as they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But joking aside, there were advantages to storing classified details in some of the world's oldest equipment. For starters, these things are self-contained and not wireless enabled, so they're not easy to break into. You could do a lot worse when safeguarding your government's all-important codes. Astronauts might eat science-y, freeze-dried food most of the time, but when it comes to personal treats, they pack an unpredictable list of comfort foods. At the top are peanut butter and tortillas, mostly because they taste like home. Hard candies come next, since they're easy to store and give a quick morale boost on stressful missions. Then there are chocolate bars and protein snacks. But one of the more surprising picks is Oreos. They've made the trip more than once. Even though they are crumbly, astronauts say the cream works like a glue to keep the halves together, making them space-friendly after all. You've never had peanut butter and tortilla? Get some peanut butter, get a tortilla, peanut butter, sprinkle some brown sugar on there, fold it up, throw it in a pan to grill it. Delicious. A Neanderthal child with Down syndrome survived to at least 6, and that finding changes how we see their whole society. Scientists first uncovered fragments of the child's skull and ear canal at the Cova Negra site in Valencia in 1989, but it took almost 35 years before experts realized that the bones showed traits consistent with Down syndrome. They nicknamed the child Tina, even though they still don't know if Tina was a boy or a girl. You can ask any family raising a child with Down syndrome. It takes constant care, extra medical attention, and a lot of patience. Even today. Thousands of years ago, those challenges would have been even harder to manage. Living past infancy with a condition like that would have been nearly impossible without help. That's why researchers think Tina must have had support well beyond just her parents. The whole group probably stepped in, proving Neanderthals were far more cooperative and protective than most people ever gave them credit for. The FBI once tried to catch terrorists by tracking falafel sales. In 2005 and 6, right in the middle of the post-September 11th security panic, the Bureau launched a program called Total Falafel Awareness. Agents focused on dozens of grocery stores in the San Francisco and San Jose areas, hoping to spot suspicious spikes in falafel purchases. The thinking was that if someone bought more falafel than usual, it might point to Iranian secret agents quietly working in California. No, seriously, that was the plan. They first gathered the baseline of normal falafel sales, then waited to see if the numbers jumped. I have no idea how successful they were, since, unsurprisingly, the program was shut down pretty quickly after officials realized how shaky the logic was. But, for a brief moment in time, tracking chickpea patties was considered a legitimate counterterrorism tool in the United States. Since I'm talking about state-level disasters, let me tell you, we still have it better than some. In 2014, Moldova watched $1 billion vanish from its national banking system in just a few days. The money was siphoned through 3 major banks and funneled into shell companies, offshore accounts, and fake loans. The aftermath was a nightmare. The national currency tanked, protests broke out, and public trust in the government fell apart. An international audit later traced the scheme to a small group of insiders protected by political allies. By the time investigators figured it out, the money had been washed through so many banks, no one could get it back. Moldova's government stepped in to bail out the banks, pushing the cost onto taxpayers. And the guy accused of masterminding it? His name is Ilan Shor, and he ran off to Russia, where he's now running a new pro-Russian political group, still dodging a 15-year prison sentence. In 1839, Queen Victoria was the one who did the proposing. Back then, that was virtually unheard of. In the Victorian era, women were expected to drop hints if they wanted to get married, never to straight up ask. But tradition flipped for a reigning queen. No one was allowed to propose to a monarch, so Victoria had to be the one to pop the question to Albert. They had been together before she took the throne in 1838, but weren't officially engaged. Once crowned, she couldn't wait for him to ask, since royal tradition strictly banned proposals being made to a ruling monarch. So, she asked Albert herself. And that was that. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79, it buried Pompeii under a thick blanket of ash and debris. And for centuries, the story ended there, with a city frozen in time. But new research says that wasn't the whole picture. Archaeologists recently found evidence that people actually came back after the disaster. Not decades later, but almost right away. Maybe they were survivors with nowhere else to go, or scavengers looking to make something out of what was left. Either way, life returned. Families lived upstairs in half-collapsed houses, turned the lower floors into makeshift cellars, and even built small ovens and mills. It wasn't the grand Pompeii of marble streets and lavish villas anymore, but people kept living there, generation after generation, for almost 400 years before finally walking away for good. No, that's not a typo that I'm reading out loud that was missed by our editor. We have in fact stored digital data inside living E. coli. In 2016, a team of researchers figured out how to slip a few bytes of information into bacterial DNA just to see if it could be done. When that actually worked, they decided to take things up a notch. Their idea was out of this world. If bacteria could carry data, maybe they could also record it. After all, these cells can go places that humans never could. If they could be turned into living recorders, we might one day watch what happens inside the body in real time. So, in 2017, the team used CRISPR to write 5 frames from Edouard Muybridge's Horse in Motion, one of the first motion pictures ever made, into the genetic code of E. coli. Each frame was converted into DNA sequences and stitched into the cell's genome. Result was incredible. Not only did the bacteria store the images, but when they reproduced, they passed most of the microscopic movie to their offspring almost perfectly intact. There's a small island in the Pacific called Pingalap Atoll, and almost 10% of the people who live there can't see color at all, as in nothing. The condition's called achromatopsia, and if you've got it, everything looks like an old black and white movie. It got its foothold in 1775 when a massive typhoon wiped out most of the island's population. One of the few survivors was a king who happened to carry the gene for total colorblindness, and as the population rebuilt, that gene spread everywhere. In the rest of the world, only about 1 in 30,000 have this condition. But here, it's just a part of everyday life. Bright sunlight can be painful too, so many islanders prefer the dark. It's one of the only places on Earth where colorblindness is the norm. In 2014, Bill Gates sat down across a chessboard from Magnus Carlsen, world champion who's been #1 for more than a decade. Now, Gates is one of the smartest men alive, a billionaire, tech genius, and a problem solver on a global scale. But chess? Well, that's Carlsen's world. The match wasn't meant to be serious, just a fun little TV segment. Still, the moment the clock started, Carlsen didn't waste a second. Within 12 seconds of his own time, Gates was cornered and checkmated. The whole thing, from handshake to post-game laughter, lasted just over a minute. To his credit, Gates laughed it off, but that short game showed the difference between regular smart and chess grandmaster smart. The London Eye was only meant to last 5 years. It's hard to believe, right? When the City of London wanted a showstopper to ring in the year 2000, they built a giant cantilevered observation wheel on the South Bank. It's not technically a Ferris wheel, since Ferris wheels are supported on both sides, while the eye is held up on just one. Technicalities aside, the lease for the structure originally only ran until 2005, but Londoners, and the rest of the world, fell in love with it almost immediately. By its first anniversary, it was clear no one wanted to see it torn down. The attraction quickly became a fixture of the skyline, and nearby neighborhoods like Waterloo and the South Bank saw a huge boom in visitors. That sealed the deal, and the London Eye was here to stay. In 2018, Domino's Russia ran a promotion that backfired in the most spectacular way. They promised free pizza for 100 years to anyone willing to get a tattoo of the Domino's logo on a visible part of their body and post a photo of it online. The marketing team figured that they might get a handful of hardcore fans willing to do it. Instead, they got absolutely swamped. Within hours, tattoo parlors were packed, and social media was flooded with photos. Some people even got giant, full back Domino tattoos to make sure that they'd qualify. Domino's panicked and tried to shut it down, limiting the prize to the first 350 participants before quietly ending the offer. But the damage was done, and the story went global. After the fiasco, Domino's had to tighten its promotional rules, adding strict participation caps and new legal clauses to avoid ever being buried under a tidal wave of pizza-loving superfans again. If you're a regular viewer, you'll know that I've covered a bunch of octopus oddities before. I mean, they're genuinely basically aliens. They have 3 hearts, blue blood, and brains that spread out through their arms. And to make things even weirder, they've also been known to open jars, use tools, and even solve mazes. But I'm here to tell you they've discovered something else. Octopuses experience 2-stage sleep just like we do. Humans have rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, where all the dreams happen, and then slow wave sleep, where the body rests and repairs. Most invertebrates only get a single-stage rest, but octopuses developed both. That suggests that this complex sleep pattern could pop up more often in life than we think. Even stranger, octopuses have brain waves and shifting color patterns just like they do when they're awake, so they might actually be replaying their day, dreaming of what they did or saw, or possibly even, chasing their favorite snack. And finally, you remember that professor who got lost and couldn't find his class because of Dungeons & Dragons? On February 14th, 2023, Professor Joseph Mullen showed up for his morning class right on schedule, only to discover the room was completely empty. None of his 40 students had arrived, which left him puzzled. He sent out an email asking what was going on, and a student replied a couple of minutes later, letting him know that he was actually in the wrong classroom. That morning, Mullins had woken up at 4 to play Dungeons & Dragons online with his friends in Australia, and the lack of sleep left him totally turned around. His wife thought he should come clean to the class, so Mullins later shared the moment online where he got 14.5 million views, proving that sleep-deprived nerds can be found at every level, no matter how many degrees you have. The fact that it was Valentine's Day and he got up to play D&D of all things is another matter entirely. So let's cover that another day. And that's a wrap. Anything interesting you'd like to add? Let me know in the comments below. But hold up, before you go, quick quiz. Around what year was the Heilongjiang hand cannon, one of the world's oldest surviving firearms, made? Was it A, 950, B, 1250, C, 1550, or D, 1750? Drop your answer in the comments below, and if you're in need of more interesting facts, well, check out our related video, 25 facts that made someone stop and say, I can't believe I didn't know that. From the guy who got swallowed by a whale to the safecracker hired to open a dead singer's vault, it's a good one. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, check out social medias, do all that fun stuff, and I'll see you again next time. Adios.